Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. Welcome to the webinar. We're just going to wait a couple minutes before we go ahead and get started in case there's anyone a little bit late logging on. Wonderful. I think we can go ahead and get started this evening. Welcome everyone to the HART Combined Intersection Project Updates webinar. My name is Alex Miller. I'm a communications and engagement consultant with Urban Systems, and I'm here just supporting the back end of the webinar this evening and providing technical support to the project team. So it's lovely to see you all here tonight. With that, I'll pass it over to my colleague, Barry.
Thanks, Alex. Hi, everybody. My name is Barry Fan. I'm a transportation engineer with Urban Systems, and I am the project manager on the consulting team for this study. I'll turn it over to Stefan.
Thanks, Barry. My name is Stefan Baer. I'm with the City of Whitehorse as a transportation engineer in the engineering services department, and I'm the city's project manager lead on this project. I'll pass it over to Iman.
Hello, my name is Iman Garay. I work as a traffic engineer at the Yukon government Highways and Public Works department, and I am co-managing this project with Stefan. And nice to see you guys.
Great, thank you everyone. I'll just ask Barry to hop over to the next slide quick and we'll run through some very quick housekeeping for this evening. Tonight is a Zoom webinar, which is a little bit different than the Zoom meetings. So the main form of communication that you can use throughout the presentation is by clicking on the Q&A button to the right-hand side on the bottom of your screen. You can ask questions throughout the presentation at any point that you like, and we'll have a period at the end of the meeting tonight to go through those questions and answer them for you. So very much looking forward to that part of the discussion. Additionally, feel free to give me an email if you're having any technological issues. My email is amiller@urbansystems.ca, and I'll be happy to help you out. And with that, I'll pass it back over to Barry for the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. So before we get started, we'll go through the agenda of today. So we'll start with the purpose of today, why we're here on this webinar. We'll go over the project overview and goals, as well as cover the project process overall and what the engagement process looks like for the project. Next, we'll touch on a little bit on the Complete Streets approach, the framework guiding this project, and then also share what we've learned and observed in terms of existing conditions for the study area. And as Alex mentioned, we'll wrap it up with questions and answers period and look forward to the next steps for this project. So in terms of the purpose of today, this public info session, The purpose is to introduce the project to community members and seek feedback on current issues and opportunities, and also provide an opportunity for the attendees to communicate directly with our project team and ask questions. So diving into the project overview, you may have seen the title of the project and be wondering, what is HART? So the City of Whitehorse and Government of Yukon are partnering to explore design options for intersection upgrades at Range Road and 2 Mile Hill Road, Alaska Highway and Hamilton Boulevard, and the surrounding streets. That's what HART stands for. Hamilton Boulevard, Alaska Highway, Range Road, and 2 Mile Hill. Way to simplify the mouthful, that is the number of intersecting streets in this study area. So these two major intersections within the city are heavily used today by a variety of road users. That includes people walking, biking, driving, and riding transit. Through this combined intersections upgrade project, the City and Government of Yukon is looking to improve safety, accessibility, and convenience of these intersections for all of these road users. So on the screen here, we have the study area, which is illustrated with the red dash boundary, and it encompasses the two core intersections that I mentioned and the adjacent area. While the main part of this work will be to look at improvements at these two intersections, the study will also be layering on considerations for connections into the neighborhoods and the adjacent land uses as well. In terms of the overall project goals, we have 3 listed here. 1, to ensure that these intersections align with the needs of people walking, biking, driving, and riding transit. We'll also explore a range of design options to reduce congestion, improve mobility, and enhance safety at these intersections, as well as work with resident stakeholders to develop options to make walking, biking, transit, and driving easier, safer, and more enjoyable. The project overall will support the city and Yukon government's transportation and sustainability goals by improving the flow of traffic and providing active transportation facilities that are safe and comfortable. And in terms of the overall project process, here we are today in round 1 of engagement. The project was launched a couple months ago, back in April, and through the months leading up to today, the focus was to understand current conditions through reviewing some of the background studies, which we'll touch on a bit later. And this round 1 of engagement is part of the information gathering phase. So idea is to collect an understanding of issues and opportunities within the study area, which then feeds into our next step throughout July and August, where options will be considered and developed based on a combination of technical work and the engagement feedback with public and key stakeholders. And throughout August and September will be our round 2 of public engagement and stakeholder engagement, where we'll share out the different design options and collect feedback on those as well. And in October, we'll be taking this input and determining a preferred option that meets the goals and objectives for this project, which will be reported back out in our 3rd round of engagement come November. And at the end of the year, a preferred final design will be developed. And just to touch this round for information gathering, we have an online survey, which is open now and available until July 5th. This survey is to help our project team understand the current issues and opportunities for this study. And in addition, we are also holding this public info session as well to introduce the project. As I mentioned, round 2 of public engagement will be focused on design options feedback. There will be another survey illustrating and communicating out what those design options are and being able to collect feedback on those design options, as well as a project information session to allow in the similar format way to communicate out these design options and seek feedback and ask questions. And then lastly, at the end of the year, our round 3 of engagement will be presenting out the preferred design option. So next we'll touch on some of the existing conditions of the study area. Zooming out from the intersections, the project area consists of different land uses and destinations in and surrounding the area, including the Fire Marshal's Office, Canada Game Center on Hamilton, the Valley View and Takini neighborhoods, the Takini Arena, the fire department station, and businesses along Range Road as well. So some of these are the key destinations and generators for travel in and around these two major intersections. And today, this area sees a mix of different modes, as mentioned earlier, traveling in and across, including motor vehicles, people cycling, and people walking. There are a number of people passing through for commuting purposes and also for recreational purposes, such as joggers, or as you can see on the bottom right image, parents with children riding along the corridor as well. The intersection today presents a number of potential conflict points where these different modes will interact, and we'll get into this in a bit more detail later in the presentation. Some of the other general observations are the long queue and delay for motor vehicle traffic. One example on the top right image there, showing the southbound direction on the Alaska Highway towards downtown in the morning, where there's more significant queues that are experienced. And overall, the corridors are not only busy for vehicle traffic, but especially on beautiful summer days or warmer weather, there's a lot of pedestrians and cyclists that traverse the area as well. In terms of background and previous studies, over the years, there's been many studies that's been completed for long-term planning and upgrades to the existing intersections, some earlier ones dating back to 2015. And this project is going to build off the recommendations from these studies, as well as a number of other previous studies in the study area. And the purpose of this study is to look at both intersections at the same time to ensure appropriate considerations are factored in how the intersections operate as a system instead of looking at it separately. So really stitching the two intersections together and looking at the area holistically. And before we get into the existing conditions details, to frame up this project, wanted to introduce that we'll be using a transportation planning and design approach called Complete Streets, which considers the needs of all road users, including all ages, physical abilities, and income levels. So the idea behind this is to support creating a safe, comfortable, livable street and to encourage people to travel by walking, cycling, and transit. In a broader perspective beyond transportation, the idea is to integrate land use, urban design, and public space to promote public life and help create complete communities. And as complete streets are just as diverse as the road users, they can take on many unique shapes and sizes. One example we're showing on the screen here is of a transformation at a major intersection in the city of Vancouver, which transformed from a more complex, large, motor vehicle-centric intersection to a simpler intersection with more green space and improved connections for all users. So in this next part of the presentation, we'll walk through some of the other observations and background information for the project area through the lens of active transportation, transit, traffic, and safety. So in terms of active transportation, here's an overview of some of the dedicated pedestrian and bicycle facilities in the study area. That includes pathways along 2 Mile Hill on both sides, pathways on Hamilton Boulevard on the north side, pathways on Range Road and Alaska Highway south of the intersection, which will be completed soon. There are also sidewalks existing on Range Road North and other trail connections, including the Trans-Canada Trail connection and other informal trails into Valley View as well. In terms of other active transportation considerations and observations, it's noted that the existing intersections are quite spacious and confusing for many road users. Through some of the previous studies and observations, a number of conflicts were observed between vehicles turning, and it's noted that it can be difficult to see pedestrians and cyclists using the crosswalks. There are some other notable concerns about safety for active transportation users at this intersection, highlighted here, such as long crossing distances at these intersections, long wait times at the signals. The intersection of Range Road intersection is also missing a crosswalk on the east leg. And as I mentioned, vehicles being allowed to turn left while introducing conflicts with pedestrians and cyclists. So those conflicts are presented at the intersection today. And then in terms of future plans for the corridors, from some of the previous studies, we know that an all ages and abilities cycling facility has been identified for Range Road North, as well as through the Valley View planning work that there can be a potential connection towards the Valley View neighborhood. In terms of the transit network, that's shown on this slide. This is the version that will come into effect this July. So currently, the central location for the transit network is served by 5 out of the 7 transit routes connecting to all neighborhoods in the city. The frequency of these routes are about once per hour, so approximately 12 transit trips per hour going through the intersections. And the current stops are shown in the black icons. So as you can see, some of the stops are of longer walking distance to these intersections, and then some of these stops are also missing formal pedestrian connections connecting to them as well. In terms of motor vehicle traffic, some of the observations on existing conditions noted, as I mentioned before, one of the more notable ones is the long queues for the southbound left turn for Alaska Highway during the morning rush hour. During this rush hour, there's also delays headed towards downtown in general. So coming down Hamilton Boulevard, as well as turning from Range Road. And in terms of traffic volumes, this stretch of 2 Mile Hill also sees quite high volumes in the peak hours, ranging from 1500 to 1700s in that same direction. And wanted to also note, in terms of traffic too, as part of the city's master transportation plan project, there's also a review of existing intersection that was completed. So through this study, there has been a number of recommendations that were made to improve flow of traffic at both of these intersections, and modified intersection signal timing based off these findings will be implemented at these intersections. So that's more of an interim upgrade to improve the flow of traffic here, and there will be no physical changes completed as part of this signal modification work. And then lastly, highlighting some of the safety observations that have been identified by community members, our own observations, as well as some of the previous studies, the concerns, kind of bridging from the previous slide, the long queues on Alaska Highway could cause driver frustration and unsafe driving behaviors. The right turns at both of the intersections are sometimes made at high speeds, which impact pedestrian and cyclist safety. Some of the left turn movements, which are permissive phasing right now, which means that left turn vehicles are allowed to turn on the green, waiting for gaps through traffic, also causing conflicts with pedestrians and cyclists crossing at the crosswalks, as well as poor lighting and limited visibility during nighttime hours. And then some of the other issues identified as well are mentioned earlier, that there's lack of connections for pedestrians to bus stops today. Some of the adjacent areas contain a higher density of driveways, and then the intersections as a whole are quite wide. So being able to, or having the need to cross multiple lanes in short distances. So that's just the overview of the understanding of existing conditions as we as a project team continue to help shape the options development phase, which is the next step to come. Next, we'll move on to the question and answer period.
Perfect. Thank you, Barry. So we have a couple of quick questions that have come in through the presentation, and of course, you're welcome to add more questions as we go along the Q&A period. So we have a few questions and then one general comment for the project team as well. So the one comment that came through is just notifying folks that all 4 sides of the Alaska Highway intersection are used by pedestrians and cyclists year-round, not necessarily just in the summer. So thank you for providing that feedback. The first question that we received, when can we expect shovels in the ground, and is there anything that can be done now?
I'll take that one on. So in terms of like bigger intersection improvements, it's really depending on budget and timing of implementation. So at least from the city's side and from the Yukon government side, which I can't speak to in as much detail, but trying to fit this project in terms of in consideration of all the city's priorities in terms of water, sewer, and transportation, and all the other priorities that the city has going on. So in terms of some of the most immediate action items is signal timing improvements, and that's something that can be done within the next year. I'd say the earliest would probably be within 1 to 2 years for shovels in the ground for the geometric improvements. Mon, did you have anything to add to that from YG's side?
I would say it's similarly budget dependent for us as well. And with all the other projects that's going on in Porter Creek and near the airport as well, I think this would be pushed back by a couple of years, at least 3 to 4 years. And as interim measures, maybe we would see some pedestrian crossings on the Alaska Highway north side, where Takini North area would connect to Mount Mac.
Thank you. Next question. Can you explain both the city's and the Yukon government's commitment to all-season active and e-bike mobility for people of all ages and abilities along the Alaska Highway?
Well, along the Alaska Highway, I think in all our new designs, we are trying to have separated pathways for bicycles, like bicycles and pedestrians. But as long as the budget is no issue, I think we would be able to clean it. But currently, I'm not sure if we would be able to service all of the pathways in the winter.
Thank you. The next
Alex, I'm just noting that I think if it's Forest question that you're referring to, it said west of the Alaska Highway, not along. And so,
oh yeah, thank you for that clarification.
yeah, and I think to answer that, I guess that's kind of within the city's ball court there, since that's under city jurisdiction. Thanks, Forrest, for the question. With this study, we're looking to also recommend the desired maintenance to and from. So designing with the maintenance in mind, with realizing that all ages and abilities is a great concept, but it's only great if it's all year round as well. So we want to develop recommendations that have commitments to all year round, all ages and abilities. So if that includes a recommendation to the west of the highway, we're definitely open to that, and we'll bring that forward as a recommendation.
Thank you. Adding more capacity to roads and highways rarely results in permanent congestion alleviation. Would you consider any methods of discouraging the volume of car traffic or even decreasing the capacity as part of this project by facilitating alternate means of transportation?
Barry, you want to take a stab at that first, and then maybe Iman and I can chime in.
Yeah, sounds good. I think in terms of the project team's approach, right now nothing is off the table. I think we're gonna develop options with different trade-offs and run it by our project team with the city and Yukon government, recognizing exactly what you mentioned there, that there's going to be trade-offs if you're trying to make the intersection more compact, safe for pedestrians and cyclists. Adding lanes wouldn't be the approach to take. So the idea right now is to look at different options in terms of how do we balance the needs of all road users. And as I showed in that example earlier in the city of Vancouver, like one of the drivers would be to try to tighten up the intersection, to be able to provide a more compact intersection for people walking, cycling, and accessing transit. So in terms of the geometric and technical design, we'll definitely be looking at intersection options that incorporate that. And maybe Stefan, you can talk a little bit about network-wise what you guys are seeing at the transportation plan level for flow of traffic in the region.
Thanks, Barry. And thanks, Richard, for the question. So I think the word that comes to mind is balance, and really just understanding the varying needs. And every corridor and every street has different needs to facilitate, and those needs are and then every corridor and street serves a different purpose. And so in this area, it's largely arterials and major collectors, and so they do have a purpose to serve. They do need to serve quick movement of people, but also some land access as well. And so there's and movement of people through a variety of modes. And we see today how people get around, and we also want to make sure that we enable further enable easier and safer movement of people, whether it's by walking, biking, by transit, or by vehicle. And so and also recognizing that there's some regional importance to this area, and that especially for goods movement, as this is one of the major entrances into the city, but also recognizing the Alaska Highway as a key north-south goods movement for the entire Yukon and the region. And so in terms of adding more capacity to roads and highways, you raise a good point, and we're looking to just really provide a solution that really meets the needs and all the competing objectives that we're trying to do. So, Mon, I'm not sure if you have anything to add in there, but I'll pass it to you if you do.
I think Stefan and Barry covered everything I wanted to say, but we're going to look at level of service for all modes of transport for these two intersections, which would be the first for the government at least. And I would say going forward, we're going to look more into supporting more active transport as well going forward, but we do not have a master plan that has that in sight though.
Thank you. So next question. Why does the city design intersections with wide sweeping corners? And this attendee noted the particular intersection at Range Road. It can encourage vehicles to make right-hand turns going quite quickly, and they rarely respect the requirements to stop at the stop line. So this might cause safety concerns for those trying to cross those roads.
Barry, I was wondering maybe you could speak to just corner design for a bit, like trying to balance that, and then I can follow up with the city's practices on that.
Sure. I can start. The first part about why are intersections designed with wide sweeping corners, I think a lot of it is historically the kind of auto-centric design principles back in the day would be accommodating vehicles moving as quickly as possible, being able to accommodate big trucks with sweeping corners. That's also a design parameter. But as we're seeing, as design principles now are more holistic, as I mentioned, that complete streets approach and providing a safe environment for all road users interacting with these intersections, we're seeing more and more design principles that prioritize tightening up these corners, being able to introduce environments that are intuitive and safe for people driving to still make the turn, but to slow down and be able to see pedestrians and cyclists crossing at these points. So yeah, some of the observations shared at the Range Road intersection, we've definitely observed as a project team ourselves, as well as saw through a lot of the issues and concerns raised through some of the previous studies that looked at the Range Road to Mile Hill intersection. And also maybe mention at this point, there's also been a independent road safety audit that's been done for these two intersections to support the development of options in this project. So some of those findings have also identified things that have been mentioned here in terms of cars turning at high speeds and not stopping for pedestrians or cyclists crossing. So definitely number of issues that have been identified that will look to address through the design options we'll be looking at the next stage.
Thanks, Barry. In terms of why the city designs with wide sweeping corners, I can't speak to the history of every just a city's historical design practice. However, my assumption is that these were based on the design guidance at the time, and so this intersection, the way it's configured right now, and particularly the corners, were designed and constructed quite some time ago, and so it was probably designed with different principles in mind, and different and also with different perspectives. As time has changed, our perspectives on transportation has certainly changed, and if anything, our perspective on transportation has probably changed a lot within the last couple of years alone. So in terms of how we move and get around, and also what we're more aware of with our surroundings and public space since the pandemic. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Next question. In the 1960s, there was a roundabout at the Alaska Highway intersection, but today the lights are often red with no vehicles in the green lanes. Why not go back to roundabouts at both intersections with refuges for pedestrians, of course?
Would Barry want to take a stab at this one as well, or?
Yeah, I think for our project team, we're excited because like I mentioned, nothing is off the table at this point. So as a next step in terms of the high level screening we'll do in terms of feasible options, roundabout has been mentioned as one thing, recognizing there was once a roundabout at this location. So we're excited to see what that means from a technical perspective, to see if it is a suitable treatment for addressing all of the issues and opportunities for this study area. So definitely hasn't been ruled out at this stage. So yeah, maybe just to close out, personally, we'll be interested to see what our team comes back with in terms of exploring roundabout options and some of the other options that are more appropriate to creating a safe environment for all road users.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that. Yeah, roundabouts are definitely not off the table. Roundabouts have a lot of advantages, but sometimes they're not the right treatment at every location. There are certain conditions that make them a suitable treatment. So areas where you have lots of space, such as this area, or areas where you have generally equal traffic flow coming from all approaches, and among a variety of other technical considerations. So once we do some more of the technical analysis and seeing if it's really a suitable treatment, we can maybe determine better if a roundabout's really an appropriate treatment. So thanks for the question, Eric, and for reminding us of the prior traffic control in this area. Some unique, interesting history here.
I would also add that the first time that me and Stefan sat down to talk about these two intersections, the first thing that came to mind was a roundabout. But as Stefan mentioned, there is a right location for a roundabout. Also, there's also acceptance of the people. Sometimes the moment the name of the roundabout comes up, people get a bit scared about it. So we have to take that into consideration as well, to see how people would accept that.
The only way to provide safety for cyclists and pedestrians around high-speed motorized traffic is to physically separate car traffic and active transportation corridors. Would you consider building a pedestrian and cyclist-only overpass from Range Road to Canada Games Centre to ensure their safety and minimize conflict with motorized traffic?
Barry, do you want to take a stab at the technical considerations with grade separation, and then I'll probably speak the end of Iman and I can follow with cost considerations.
Yeah, that sounds good. Just reading through the question again. I think in terms of technical considerations, sometimes we see if you're providing an overpass option that bypasses the kind of on the grounds neighborhood level connections, it only services more of a long haul commuting desire, and it doesn't improve the on the ground conditions for those who are accessing the intersection in the immediate vicinity. And then some of the more, the technical consideration is for providing an overpass over a section like Alaska Highway. To be able to get up to that grade, you're gonna need to provide the appropriate ramp that's accessible for people of all ages and ability, wheelchair users and whatnot, and that could be quite space intensive as well to be able to ramp up and ramp back down. So there's some of more general overpass considerations mentioned here without having really looked into that in more detail.
Mon, do you have anything to add with like cost considerations or other just grade separation for active users at the Alaska Highway?
I think this would be something that we should see as an option, and we see the different costs between the different options, and we would be discussed between the managers and probably political leaders. And if there is budget, we would consider, but it all depends on the budget available for the project.
Thanks. Yeah, I think the same would be said from the city as well in terms of budgetary costs, and the decision whether to go with one or without grade separation will be based on technical factors and cost factors, but also if a decision is not to employ a grade separation for active transportation, it doesn't mean that other options we would consider would not be ideal for active transportation. As with any of these like transportation planning initiatives, there's always trade-offs, and we have to live within our means and with our constraints, but we also want to still meet our objectives, such as improving safety and minimizing conflicts with motorized vehicles, and we do have other tools available to mitigate those as well, and that it's not just full grade separation. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Next question. Will you adopt the green transportation hierarchy, especially since both of your governments have declared climate emergencies?
I assume green transportation hierarchy means like the regular transportation hierarchy. Maybe Forrest can clarify below with like pedestrian, like the hierarchy with pedestrians and then cyclists. It's like an upside down pyramid usually. That's how I interpret this question. Oh, yep, Forrest says correct. I'll speak on behalf of the city, and then I'll follow with, and I think Aman could speak on behalf of the government. So yes, Forrest, will adopt the green transportation hierarchy, or the hierarchy, and this is communicated in our official community plan, and so being a direct implementation action item of the city, being a city project, we have to realize the vision of the official community plan, and that does include the transportation hierarchy, where walking is prioritized over cycling, and cycling over transit over vehicular movement. And so so those will be that will be considered in the development of this project. Amon?
I would say the government would for surely look into that, but dealing with highways, because we deal with mostly like car traffic compared to pedestrians. If we are inside a community zone, I would say for sure we would look into more green transportation per se. But if you're outside of the city limits, I'm not sure if the possibility would always be there to accommodate pedestrians and bicyclists. But as long as we are close to the city limits and communities, I think that would be something that we would look into coming up in our new functional plan.
And I think to add to the transportation hierarchy, like there is, I think in terms of like how it's applied, like this is a fairly new concept for the city. And so having now being in our official community plan. And so it's going to be a bit of learning on how this is really applied into practice and how we actually make decisions. And so looking forward to this project to see how we can really live according to those values and to bring that into our planning and into our design and in operations of our transportation network. Barry, do you have anything to add on applying the hierarchy to design and planning and how that's done?
I think, yeah, another maybe input here is we've also asked some of those questions in the survey in terms of what people are observing today and how people see prioritization between different trade-offs for the intersection design. So I think that would also bolster and support what that hierarchy sticks for, is like hearing public feedback as well in terms of support for prioritizing, making it safer for people and walking over, say, delays in vehicle traffic and travel time and things like that. So hopefully, yeah, we'll see. As Stefan mentioned, like the city's priorities align with what we're hearing with the public input as well. So yeah, all factors that will help the project team in terms of options that we develop, evaluating trade-offs between the options and how we rank them.
Thanks, Barry. The next question. If you stick with four-way intersections, would you consider near side signals so that vehicles have a disincentive to intrude into pedestrian space?
I'll start with this one, and then maybe Barry, I can ask you if you have any experience on that. Yeah, so thanks for the question, Eric. Near side signals, for those who are unfamiliar on this call, are signals that are not placed across the street in front of you when you're stopped at an intersection, but they're actually placed on the same side of the street. And so if any of you have traveled in Europe, particularly in Germany or the Netherlands, or I'm sure many other countries do use it there, they tend to put their traffic signals on what we might consider in North America on the wrong side of the street. And it's a bit different to get used to. And what it tends to do, as Eric has alluded, is the configuration tends to make drivers stop before the stop line because the traffic signal is placed close to the stop line or right at the stop line. It's a relatively new concept in North America. I'm only aware of one city in North America that's used it, and that's Canmore in Alberta. I believe maybe Barry, you know of any more, but
yeah, Canmore is the only example in Canada, I think, that I know of. There might be others in North America, in the States. And I know at least some cities in the States also have a hybrid. They have the near side and far side configuration.
Yeah, so one thing to keep in mind is that it's a pretty non-standard configuration for North American streets, and an aim of transportation is to try to make things consistent. And whenever you introduce a new element, it introduces some sort of inconsistency in the way of design approach. There's always familiarity that's taken or that's needed from residents to get used to the new traffic control or how something is designed or oriented. And so I wouldn't say near site signals are off the table. I'm quite interested in them myself, having seen their performance in countries in Europe. However, there's also some cultural considerations and the local context. And I wouldn't say it's off the table, but there's a lot of considerations with using it. Barry or Iman, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say that people's acceptance would be key because like we sometimes introduce some new small things such as like a protected left turn, and we still get emails from people about not being familiar with how these new signals work. So for surely there would be some consideration about people accepting new type of signals for sure.
Yeah, maybe one piece to add there is also both Stefan and Iman mentioned the cost consideration. So if there's ways to address the concerns of users not stopping and intruding the pedestrian space without having like a major change in infrastructure, is that dollar better use in improvements elsewhere if we can keep the existing signals where they are in the far side. So that's also like a consideration, is where best to invest the money for the upgrades as well.
Thanks, Barry. The next question is about, similar to your last point there, how costs are factored into the decision-making criteria. There is a bit of concern over some high government spending on the highway widening.
Well, I would say the highway widening is something that has been informed by the functional plan that was prepared around 2015. And I think the government has been following that functional plan since, but we have recently been trying to start a new conversation about updating all these plans that we had, and they're kind of outdated. So hopefully going forward, we'll see a change in the plans that we had from before. And also if there has been a design, as far as we can try is we can try and look into doing the safety audits of the existing designs that have not been built yet. So we make sure everything is safe before they go out.
Thank you. The next question, so there's a bit of context, and then there's the question at the end. So much of the congestion in the area and other areas of the downtown approach was created by building car-centric residential neighborhoods without adequate local services for the residents, such as schools, shopping, commercial zoning, restaurants, and other facilities. It is an impossible task to engineer ourselves out of this unsustainable trajectory. Congestion will only increase with the development of additional whistle bend phases unless they are built as complete neighborhoods that do not require residents to always drive downtown to participate in society. So the question is, would you consider making our residential neighborhoods more complete and livable to reduce the burden of our transportation corridors?
Great question, Richard. You're speaking to a really important principle of transportation planning, and that's the link between land use and transportation, and how basically they're two sides of the same coin. They're the places that we live, work, and play, and there's the places, and then there's the way to get between them through our modes of transportation and through our networks, be it walking, cycling, transit, or driving. Sometimes there's some things that are like far more regulated and go through different processes than this project does, and one of those is land use. And so land use is guided by our official community plan, which was approved recently. And as far as this project scope is concerned and what it covers, it's really, we're implementing and actualizing the land use that has been proposed. And so the official community plan does have statements and policies and zoning considerations within it that provide for building more complete communities and like providing, say, more services closer to where people live. So things like daycares, maybe a cafe. And also, in speaking in Whistle Bend in particular, they do have a commercial high street that is currently being developed. And so that will bring more services, basic services, to some of these outer neighborhoods, so they don't have to drive into downtown and do this, like just to participate in society and get your daily goods and services. So yeah, so just all in all, yeah, the official community plan is really the place for that, and this project is actualizing some of the vision of the official community plan. It's also important to note that as Whistlebend grows and other neighborhoods grow and develop, there's also some market considerations. So things like cafes and other services that make their way into their outer neighborhoods, it's really proponents and developers aren't going to build that unless there's a market for it as well. And so there needs to be a market side for it, and there needs to be an incentive for these things to get developed closer to where people live. Barry, do you have any other comments on land use and transportation planning?
No, I think you summarized it quite well. Yeah, the connection between land use and transportation, and the OCP being really the guiding document that informs, like in particular for this study. Yeah, we won't be looking to change the land use per se, but really work within what's there today to provide an improved condition.
Thanks, Barry. The next question is regarding why we're referencing the AK functional plan, as there's a belief that it had previously been canceled.
Well, I believe some of these upgrades have already been designed and they were like in the works to go out, but about why they're being constructed, that's kind of above my jurisdiction to talk about. I'm not sure. Sometimes we also don't agree with some of the upgrades ourselves, but if a DM or the minister wants them to be done, we kind of don't have a say in it sometimes.
Great. So for now, that appears to be the last question. So I'll just give it a couple of seconds in case we get any last minute questions before moving on to the next slides. Okay, I don't see any other ones coming through.
I just want to say thanks for all these were really great questions coming in. So yeah, we got a really educated and informed audience here. So really appreciate all the technical and non-technical questions coming our way.
Yeah, I echo that sentiment. And with that, Barry, I'll get you to go ahead towards the next slide.
Sounds good. Yeah, we were wondering how many questions we would get, and this definitely quelled those fears of it being a quiet question and answer period. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Perfect. So just to wrap up the evening tonight, there are a couple of last points that we wanted to cover. So to stay involved, feel free to visit the project website. So it's the engagewhitehorse.ca/HART. We welcome you to participate in the online survey and spread the word about the online survey, which closes on July 5th. And you're also able, if you have any additional questions after tonight, you can submit those through the Ask a Question feature on the project website. Wonderful. And I think we all just want to say thank you so much for taking the time and, as mentioned, asking such insightful questions, and for coming out this evening and participating.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for attending and for your good questions.
Have a wonderful rest of your evening.